This is a chance for voters to hear from both of these major candidates and then the mayor's race.
We'll throw it out to Alex Michelson for debate night on Fox 11.
Tonight, back-to-back debates for arguably the two most important jobs in Los Angeles. Congresswoman Karen Bass faces off against businessman Rick Caruso, each hoping they'll get your vote for mayor of Los Angeles. But first, former Long Beach Police Chief Robert Luna goes head-to-head against Sheriff Alex Villanueva, both hoping to be the next sheriff of Los Angeles County. The stakes have never been higher. We'll address homelessness, crime, the environment, and much more. I'm Alex Michelson from Fox 11. Tonight, I'll be joined by LA Times columnist Erica D. Smith, Univision anchors Gabriela Tesser and Oswaldo Boras, as well as KPCC's Frank Stolz, with input from Loyola Marymount University and the LA Urban League. As we're live from the Magnin Auditorium at the Skirball Cultural Center, this is Debate Night in Los Angeles.
Inside the Skirball Cultural Center, and welcome to Debate Night in Los Angeles. I'm Alex Michelson alongside Erica D. Smith, Oswaldo Boras, and we've got Sheriff Alex Villanueva and Chief Robert Luna. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get to the rules. So we're going to go back and forth among rounds of questions. Each round, you're going to get a question for 1 minute. You're going to get a question for 1 minute. You're going to have 30 seconds to respond. You're going to have 30 seconds to respond. In that time, we also will have opportunities potentially for follow-ups. You don't have to use all the time. If you don't use all the time, we have time for more questions. If you go over time, there's going to be a bell. And by the way, if you want to get involved in social media, you can use the hashtag Fox11Debate in social media as well. So let's get started. Chief Luna, we'll start with you, alphabetical order. We know elections are usually a referendum on the incumbent. Why do you think that voters should vote out Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and why are you the one to replace him?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight, thank the moderators and the organizers for this debate. I'm running for sheriff because I care, I want to make a difference, and at the end of the day, we absolutely need change. I grew up in East Los Angeles, unincorporated area, to immigrant parents, and I was inspired to be a police officer. That journey took me to the city of Long Beach, and I spent 36 years there serving my community, 7 years as a police chief, where I was very successful at reducing crime and increasing police accountability, and that's exactly what I'm going to do as the LA County Sheriff.
All right, Sheriff, to you. Why do you deserve 4 more years?
Well, this is a very basic situation. I campaigned 4 years ago on reform, rebuild, and restore, and I can report 4 years later we have accomplished exactly that. The challenges have changed. Homelessness continues to grow out of control. Violent crime from the George Floyd murder forward has just spiraled out of control. And now public corruption is rearing its ugly head. All these things require a major commitment on my part, on the part of the entire Sheriff's Department, to serve the community, and that is what our goal is right here. And I am not buying this idea that when the Board of Supervisors recruits 8 candidates to run against me, they did it for one reason only, because they want a puppet, and we have the person right here as that puppet. He volunteered for that. And 4 years ago, where were all these people that had such a big interest in running for sheriff? There was nobody. Myself and one other candidate. There's a reason why. This is about the independence of the Sheriff's Department in checks and balances against the unlimited power of the Board of Supervisors. That's what's at stake.
What do you say to the charge that you're just a puppet for the Board of Supervisors and you're going to do what the establishment wants?
I'd like to start off with saying 70% of the people in the primary voted against Alex Villanueva. There were 7 candidates, and by the way, they've all endorsed me for the sheriff's race. And here's something that the sheriff needs to learn. When you're working with people, that doesn't mean you're a puppet. That means you're working with people to collaborate at the end of the day to serve our community, the members of our county, in the best way possible. When you are consistently putting down the people who manage your budget, you're not serving our residents to the best of your ability.
Well, on that point, that the Board of Supervisors controls the purse strings, and if you're alienating them, that actually hurts the Sheriff's Department. What do you say to that?
Actually, if you're not fighting against the defunding effort of the Board of Supervisors, you're not serving the community. You're actually acquiescing to the defunding scheme. And I am dead set against that. Because we have major challenges, you cannot fight crime without crime fighters. And I have an opponent, in fact, all of them combined had over 100 years as registered Republicans, and I'm the only lifelong Democrat still standing right here today, and that is the difference between the two of us right there. However, I'm committed to working with both sides of the aisle moving forward.
Yeah, and that issue of how to work with people seems really central to this race. Erica Smith has more on that.
Thanks, Alex. Chief, Sheriff, I'd like to start with you actually to piggyback on what you just said. You know, throughout your term, you've battled with the Inspector General, the Board of Supervisors, the Civilian Oversight Commission. Is there value in working with people you disagree with in government?
There's always value in doing that. I've done 103 town halls to date. I've met people across the county. Most agree with me, some disagree with me, some of them very vocally, to the point I've gotten death threats, you know, because of the actions I've done. But if people are doing the right thing for the right reasons, I will work shoulder to shoulder with them. You look at the collaboration with Catherine Barger in the high desert with the marijuana eradication. I appreciated her efforts, and we're working together. However, when the efforts of the board are towards basically breaking up government unions, contracting out the official business of government to the private nonprofit sector where there's no accountability, there's no transparency, there's no results, I'm going to object to that because I need the resources. I need to have a fully staffed department. So when they impose a hiring freeze on the department, what am I going to do, greet it with open arms? Of course I'm going to object to that. But the question is, we can disagree, and I agree, Alex, with you. We have to disagree civilly, but we have to stake our positions, and we have to defend them. If you're not willing to defend it, why are you here?
Thanks. Chief, how would you do things differently? How would you work with others in government if you're elected?
The first thing I would do as sheriff is I would stop this us versus them culture and mentality. When you have a person who stands up in front of the cameras and in front of all the residents in Los Angeles County and is consistently putting down not only the Board of Supervisors, but other elected officials that because he doesn't agree, and you said it earlier, part of governing is not agreeing with people, but it's the way you handle it. And by the way, if I didn't mention this earlier, yes, I do have the endorsement of all 5 of our LA County supervisors. Why? Because they have seen the way I work with people. And I want to make a distinction. I work with people. I don't work for people. That's the contrast between myself and my opponent to my left.
Sheriff, would you say to that, you know?
Well, for one, I'd say his record in Long Beach belies that. He definitely works for example, when Long Beach was burning down in the middle of the riots, where was my opponent? He acquiesced to what the mayor and the political establishment of Long Beach said, which is don't do anything. Don't offend the looters. It's just property damage. And of course, we've spoken directly to the people impacted by it, and they have a wildly different opinion of that. So there's a point in time when you have to step up to the plate and do the right thing. It's just not going to happen with this man.
Chief, your response?
It's embarrassing for the man in charge of LA County Sheriff to be passing on bad information, but that's who he is. Everything he just said was false. My mayor never ordered me to pull back from looters. As a matter of fact, he's the sheriff of LA County. If he would have been doing his job that day and summoning more mutual aid for the entire area, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and Long Beach wouldn't have suffered the way we did. He was out saying he was leading from the front, chasing people around. Where he should have been is trying to summon more law enforcement help from all over the state and county, including the National Guard.
We're going to move on.
All right. Now to the #1 thing that people emailed us about, which is the issue of homelessness. Oswaldo has more on that.
Thank you, Alex. And I would like to start with you, Chief Luna. What do you see as the department's role in addressing street encampments and other visible homelessness in not only the county, but in many areas that affect around?
With homelessness, the status quo is absolutely not working. There are way too many people that are mentally ill and addicted, who don't have housing, who are on our streets, and we need to do a better job. In regards to policing or the sheriff's department, our primary job is to support our partners. We have to, in Long Beach as a police chief, I supported our health department, and before COVID hit, our actual homeless numbers were starting to drop. Obviously, COVID hit, it started going the other way. We cannot have a police leader who decides at the last minute to get in front of a TV camera and say, look at the credit, I'm taking credit for cleaning up a specific block or area, and not give credit to all the government entities and the non-government entities who are working their butts off to clean the streets, whether it was Venice, the VA hospital, or Alvera Street, or some of these other locations around the county of Los Angeles.
Well, speaking of that, Mr. Villanueva, a lot of Venice residents say homeless encampments precisely were cleared off the boardwalk, and they ended up moving to different locations around the Venice area in front of their homes in some cases. What do you say to critics that they say that those cleanups were basically a situation where you were not actually solving the problem by just moving it someplace else?
Well, actually, there's plenty of people that say we did improve on the Venice boardwalk itself. The same thing with Olvera Street. Well, my opponent didn't answer the question, what is the proper role of law enforcement? I'll tell you, the proper role of law enforcement is to regulate public space, actually work in a collaborative environment, which we're doing with our Homeless Outreach Service team. We work with the LA Homeless Service Authority, and we've worked at the county level, at the city level, and it works. Sometimes with, for example, Councilman Kevin De Leon, we worked together. We got Olvera Street cleaned up pretty quickly. On Venice Boardwalk with Councilman Mike Bonin, it dragged on quite a bit. It didn't need to be, because he was resistive to actually cleaning up the boardwalk for whatever his motives are. But at the end of the day, let me borrow his famous phrase, we need to make sure we regulate public space, we get people the shelter, the help they need, and return that space to the community. That is a role of law enforcement to make sure it happens. Under his plan, he has no plan. He just said it. Couldn't say a single thing that the law enforcement is supposed to do.
So, Chief Luna, would you like to follow up with that? Do you have a plan?
Yes. We have to have a holistic approach to work with our partners, and it doesn't matter who gets credit. The sheriff should not have been out in Venice taking credit for all that work. Although the members of the sheriff's department did do some good work out there, he should have been thanking the men and women of the St. Joseph Center who actually did all the pre-work out there. But law enforcement, you have to have a part in it. You have to be a good partner. You have to collaborate and get along with people. And here's the difference. Again, if somebody doesn't agree with you, you have to be able to find a middle ground to get the job done.
Thank you very much. To you, yeah, you get a response there.
I'm still waiting for the plan. Where is it? You know, holistically throwing all these buzzwords does not get us anywhere, does not get a single person into shelter. We have to literally get the Board of Supervisors and the mayor, primarily the board, to build up capacity, shelter capacity and treatment for those who suffer mental illness, substance abuse. We got to build it up tenfold from what we have today. That has to be priority number one. And then we have to work with all of the entities that work together with the Homeless Outreach Service team to get them into shelter, reclaim our public space.
On to another question now. The Sheriff's Department has been in the news a lot over the last week, a lot of developing news, including today on that front. Frank Stoltz from KPCC has a question about that.
Thanks, Alex. This is to you, Sheriff. The State Attorney General has just taken over a criminal investigation your department was conducting into two people you have clashed with publicly, County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl and a member of the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission. Wouldn't it have been more appropriate and more ethical if you had gone to an outside agency in the first place, given both these people either have budgetary or oversight responsibility over your department?
Very good question. The answer is we've already done that. This investigation started in September of 2019, and we consulted with the Attorney General. And that is my practice in every investigation that may be complicated or politically sensitive. For those that really don't want to be transparent about what their business is, like the Board of Supervisors, we approach the Attorney General, we approach the FBI, we make them aware of our concerns. And specifically the Attorney General in February, we told them, hey, this is everything that's going on. This is a search warrant we executed back in, it was back in 2021, February of 2021. 18 months later, the board has been fighting tooth and nail to prevent the evidence seized in search warrants from being revealed. And now they're fighting all over again with a new batch of court motions to fight evidence being revealed. Why is this? That is the important question, not what you perceive as a conflict of interest, because look it up in the penal code or the government code, it does not exist. The authority of the sheriff is to investigate crime, period.
Chief Luna, would you handle this investigation differently?
Yes, 100%. I strongly agree that the Attorney General stripped the sheriff of this investigation because the sheriff had no business investigating this from the very beginning. You cannot investigate your political opponents or enemies. You've heard him talking for the last several minutes. Every time he brings up the Board of Supervisors, there's anger in his voice. He hates them. He doesn't like them. He doesn't get along with them. You should not be investigating this. This is why the public trust has been eroded, specifically with this incident. You cannot do this. I'm elected sheriff. I'm going to handle it completely different.
Sheriff, you say you recused yourself from the Kuehl investigation. You handed it over to your undersheriff, who, of course, reports to you. Yet you were in the media talking about this search warrant last week. How can you read that as a recusal? How can this not be viewed as political bullying and intimidation of the supervisor, who, again, has budgetary control over your department?
Well, first, let's address what Mr. Luna just said. One, he's not going to touch public corruption. He won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, because his job as puppet is to look the other way. When it comes to commenting on last week's search warrant, Sheila Kuehl, the supervisor, made the astonishing admission that she was alerted illegally by the Inspector General and County Council. That is the scandal that the media here, for some reason, doesn't really want to talk about. It's all focused on, let's call me the whistleblower, the one who's actually in charge of the department. Where is the concern there? That's the question.
Chief Luna, do you want to respond to his accusation that you will not investigate public corruption?
Again, that's absolutely false. We have corruption. I am going to immediately get on the phone with one of our partners that I have an amazing relationship with, whether it's state DOJ, the FBI, or somebody else. So just think of it this way. If there is evidence of misdoing or some crime, what jury is going to believe the man who consistently gets out in front of a camera and demeans the 5 Board of Supervisors? You got to think of it that way. There's got to be a different way of doing this.
All right, now we're going to ask a question that may take the temperature down a bit, maybe. This LA Times reader, Teresa Gaines, asked a question about trust, which is a theme that both of you have brought up. And my question is, you both have said that integrity is key for law enforcement. I'll start with you, Chief Luna. Can you tell us about what individual in your life most shaped your worldview about ethics and how?
There's a whole list of people, but I'd start off with my mother. My mother was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. She had a 3rd grade education. Although she was born in Modesto, California, she was born to a migrant family from Michoacan, Mexico. And she taught me about character, work ethic, and always 100% being honest. And it carried on from there. In my work life at the Long Beach Police Department, I met some of the most incredible human beings that work there. That were absolutely 100% about integrity. Integrity is the cornerstone of law enforcement. Our law enforcement code of ethics, our oath that we took, it is the most important thing that we teach our new recruits when they come into the work environment under law enforcement, and that's what we eventually will regain as public trust as we move forward.
Sheriff, same question to you. What individual most shaped your worldview about ethics?
Well, I can say, and I'll agree with him, at the beginning was my mother, but in my adult life, it's my wife, Vivian. She was literally born and raised in East LA. She went to 4th Street Elementary. She went to Griffith Junior High. She went to Garfield High School, and then Cal State LA. That's what's called born and raised in East LA really means. So if you want to talk about integrity, you might want to clarify exactly where you were raised and what schools you went to. This is what integrity is all about. When you're doing the right thing when no one is looking. And now there's a lot of people looking. But when it came to speaking truth to power, that's integrity. I told Lee Baca and Paul Tanaka when I was a lonely sergeant with no voice that they were wrong. They were doing things that were illegal, unethical. It was a lead to the downfall of the organization. I was proved right, but it cost me a career for many, many years because I spoke truth to power. Now, as a sheriff, I'm speaking the truth to power again, and it's like Groundhog Day. The political establishment is trying to, oh my God, what is he doing now?
Are you saying that he doesn't have integrity?
He needs to clarify, where was he raised?
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was born in East Los Angeles. My dad was migrated here, I said earlier, from Sinaloa, Mexico. My mother, I was the oldest of 3 kids. I went to Rowan Elementary. I went to Our Lady of Lourdes. And then my parents were able to finally afford a house, and we moved away. I went to middle school and high school in Santa Fe Springs, which I'm very, very proud of.
And why is that such an issue?
Because he claimed that in East LA he saw deputies at work and he knew a good cop from a bad cop, and I really have doubt when you're that young that you can understand the difference of the two. Those are things you get when you get a little bit older in life.
All right, we're going to real quickly.
When I was 5 and 6 years old, growing up in East LA, and I say growing up because I was born there, during the Chicano moratorium and the anti-Vietnam protest, as a 5 and 6 year old, when you see deputies using force on people with batons, I don't know about any of you in the crowd, I never forgot that. Again, we have the sheriff of LA County who's supposed to talk about deputy-involved shootings, natural disasters, and all these critical incidences, and he's making up information right here in front of all of you.
So I'm just going to note that this was the question that was supposed to bring the temperature down. So there we go. This next one may bring the temperature up. Erica, to you.
Yeah, no attempt here to bring it down. So our partners, debate partners at the LA Urban League have described the Sheriff's Department's relationship with the black community as, quote, less than stellar. More recently, Sheriff, you've made some troubling comments to the LA Times about black people, including that we are inherently prone to criminality. How should black voters interpret those comments?
Well, actually, I think the better question is, how does people interpret the Wren family tree? This was posted in Long Beach Police Department's homicide unit, and it's a tree full of individuals who were convicted, I guess, of murder, and they're all white faces, and the last face at the bottom hanging on a noose is a black man. Here's a photo of a radio car, it looks like a slick car, with a banana peel on it. There's images of Mr. Popo circulated throughout the department, openly using the N-word. And when people came to Mr. Luna as a supervisor to complain about it, they're the one that faced the retaliation. They were the one that had to move out, or some of them were forced to retire, resigned, and face discipline. So they became the subject of the investigation, kind of like right now when I'm pointing out and the public corruption unit does their job, all of a sudden the script is flipped. So actually, our department is a model of inclusiveness.
Sheriff, you want to respond to that? Or Chief, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. As you just witnessed, when asked tough questions, it's somebody else's fault. I'm the victim, blame it on somebody else. That family tree that he's talking about, and this is documented in the Long Beach Police Department. I was a police sergeant at that time working for a deputy chief of investigations. A very good detective brought it to my attention, and immediately I turned it over to my deputy chief, and we turned it into an administrative investigation. So again, I have a guy sitting here to my left making up stuff, and that's scary when we're talking about the sheriff of Los Angeles County.
Sheriff, I'm going to let you respond to that, but you didn't actually answer the original question. So I'd like you to answer that as well as respond.
And what was the original question?
How should black voters respond to some of the comments you've made recently?
Black voters need to respond because our department is a model of inclusiveness. As sheriff, my first month in office, I promoted African-American female to the rank of division chief. I have 4 of the 12 are African-American. I have 698 sworn employees who are African-American. All of our policies are inclusive that allow everyone to compete on a level playing field. That is inclusive. But by the way, you need to get your facts a little better. Maybe it's time. But the gentleman right there,
Thank you.
Mark McGuire, can
Thank you,
explain
Sheriff.
exactly what happened.
All right.
All right, Chief, you have one response to that. How would you address that relationship between the community and the department if elected?
That it's absolutely critical. We have a very negative history in law enforcement and our black community that goes back decades. I think it's evolved, it's gotten better, but we have a long ways to go. And there's a lot of mistrust. For me, being elected as your sheriff, I'm going to work my tail off to do everything I can to work with all communities, specifically our black community, to make our relationship better and unique. I want to point something out. In one of the last 6 lawsuits that this sheriff has been involved in, there was a chief
We're going to have to
female.
cut you off. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. We'll get to that hopefully later. Oswaldo, public safety.
Indeed, and we have a question from a viewer named Laura Vidales, and she says, as a lifelong resident, I can honestly say Los Angeles currently feels like a very unsafe place to live. Why is Laura safer with you as a sheriff than your opponent? Let's start off with you, Sheriff Villanueva.
En primer lugar, es un privilegio poder responder esta pregunta.
Gracias.
Para los televidentes de Univisión. La razón por que estamos viendo tanta violencia es por 2 razones principales. Hay muchos que están empujando la ola de crimen que estamos viendo en este momento, pero tenemos un fiscal de distrito que se reniega a hacer su trabajo, de hacer todos los casos que llevamos a su oficina. No lo está poniendo frente a las tribunas, que las personas sean acontables por lo que están haciendo. Y en la segunda, la Junta de Supervisores quitándole los fondos a nuestras comunidades, y eso quiere decir que los alguaciles que trabajando en las calles, hay muchos menos. Estamos faltando 30% de todos los alguaciles en todas las estaciones de sheriff a través del condado. Con menos policías, más pillos, como dicen. Y eso es la razón que tenemos eso.
For the white boy here, what just happened?
Well, why don't we have Chief Luna translate?
What did he say?
Chief Luna, would you like to help us with that? Yeah, respond, and if you want to translate it.
I'll respond to it.
Sure.
Crime is the #1 challenge or priority for anybody that's an executive in law enforcement, whether it's a sheriff's department or any police department. I feel the trajectory of crime in Los Angeles County, like it is in most major cities, is going up. What we need is a sheriff who takes accountability and gives you a plan for what they're doing to address crime. You cannot have a 77% increase in homicides the way the sheriff's department does and has a sheriff that blames the board of supervisors, that blames a district attorney, that blames everybody else. You need a plan, because at the end of the day, I need to keep you and your family safe. So in Long Beach, I reduced violent crime by 6.5% and property crime by 10%. At the same time that my council had reduced my staffing, and I was working for the same DA that everybody else was in LA County. Stop the excuses. Let's get the job done.
Thank you. Sheriff, do you want to follow up on anything on this?
Actually, notice I don't think he quite finished the question about Mr. Mark McGuire over there. He told you quite a bit about action he took, but what he didn't tell you is that he asked him to please address it in confidence. And you threw him under the bus the very next day. He had to report to the chief. And that pretty much plateaued his career right now. And that is not acceptable. Not acceptable on the sheriff's department. And that's actually a violation of policy.
Okay, but speaking of what the question was, do you want to follow up to anything that he said?
I think we need to work together. Of course we need to work together, but we need to have a district attorney that does his job. 13,677 cases that were not prosecuted by George Gascon in 2021, and he enthusiastically embraces that lack of effort from Gascon.
And Oswaldo, can you give us a 15-second translation of his original answer for people that may not have
Well, why don't we have the sheriff do it for us?
Pretty much said that, you know, when you have crime rising, what can we do about it, and why does the caller is concerned? She has a right to be concerned. You have a district attorney that was not prosecuting crime. His special orders are directly leaving dangerous people on the street. That revolving door is prejudicing everyone. And on top of that, the defunding effort from the Board of Supervisors means I have less personnel.
Okay.
A lot, like 2,300 less personnel.
All right, we're getting some extra time in there for you. We're going to now move to a question about transportation. The LA Sheriff's Department helps to patrol Metro along with the LAPD and the Long Beach Police Department, which of course Robert Luna used to oversee. We have a question from one of our partners from Loyola Marymount University. This is a student named Chloe Barcenas, and she's a sophomore at LMU, and she joins us now. Chloe.
After my fellow students and I graduate, we want to ride public transportation to our future jobs. Yet we are concerned it's not safe. What is your plan to resolve this issue?
Sheriff, to you first.
Oh, this is a pretty easy one. Over the summer, we launched the Operation Safe Travel. We flooded the train system with as many of our personnel we could physically assign to it, and they were able to reduce violent crime by 85%. Huge reduction in crime when we were present. The Metro Board right now wants to replace law enforcement, sworn law enforcement, with unarmed ambassadors, and they want to increase outreach to the homeless and decrease the presence of law enforcement. I'm quoting the chair of the MTA board. That is why you see the disaster you have today. 5,700 homeless were camped out on the trains and on the platforms. That is unacceptable. We had a man set on fire on the Gold Line. He was set on fire twice by a transient. That is the conditions right now. In fact, I had the chance to ride the trains with Violeta, a lovely young lady who goes to school in Long Beach, and she's going traversing the entire length of it. And what she told me about is appalling, and we do have a plan, and it involves actually enforcing the rule of law.
Chief Luna, that question about transportation safety.
We have an obligation to make sure that our trains and buses are safe. It takes a collaborative effort, and right now there are 3 agencies doing it. You have the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, you have the Los Angeles Police Department, you have the Long Beach Police Department. And the plan is working out pretty good. Not too long ago, the sheriff got up and made a threat and said, if you don't give it all back to me, I'm going to walk away from this. And again, it's that us versus them mentality. That's not the way we keep people safe. We continuously have to work, just like we do with all crime, is look at data. You have to be data driven. Where is it happening? How are we addressing it? And then hold your people accountable to make sure that safety is going up. Because at the end of the day, if we don't keep it safe, people aren't going to write it. But they depend on us. And I'm not just saying law enforcement. I think the sheriff was talking about alternative responses. That is something we have to look towards, to do enforcement or safety in a different manner, looking at the future.
Sheriff, what do you make of Chief Luna's record on public safety helping to oversee Metro?
Well, I can tell you this. Part of the problem that we've seen explode since 2017, when the Sheriff's Department had the entire contract, was the MTA board created a Metro court where they were going to address quality of life issue, which are lower level misdemeanor crimes. And they were going to be enforced by security, not by law enforcement. So they essentially handcuffed law enforcement, and then the homeless population on the train just exploded overnight. And that is a crisis we're seeing today, and that has to end. We have to revert back to a law enforcement model and hold people accountable.
Last word to you.
Accountability is very important, but let's look at different methods of getting there. We have issues with mental health. We have issue with the unhoused and the addicted. The police aren't going to solve all those problems. We have to be at the table. We have to be part of the solution, but let's incorporate other people so we can at least look at this long term and do something that's sustainable. We can't afford what the sheriff is suggesting.
If you are just joining us, the time is now 6:30. You are watching the Sheriff's Debate for Debate Night in Los Angeles. I'm Alex Michelson. Our next question goes to Erica D. Smith of the LA Times.
Thank you, Alex. As you mentioned earlier, we did poll viewers and readers ahead of this debate to try to get questions. One of the things that came up quite a bit was deputy gangs. And I wanted to ask a question about that. Chief Luna, how big do you think of an issue this is in the department right now?
It's a big issue. As I've been campaigning across this county, listening to the residents of every corner, deputy gangs are one of the top 3 questions that I get. And here's my plan. Number 1, you have to admit that there's a problem if you're going to fix it. Number 2, you make sure people on the inside and outside know it's absolutely unacceptable. You got to make sure there's a policy. And if you write a policy and you don't do training or you don't hold anybody accountable, the training isn't, or the policy isn't worth the paper it's written on. At the same time, we need federal and state intervention. And noble concept here, cooperate with oversight. If you get subpoenaed, you go to wherever you're subpoenaed. We have to, this goes back to the first question you asked about public trust. We have to show the public that they can trust us, and right now, they do not. There is a mental health care component to this. In my late years as chief of police in Long Beach, mental health care became more of a priority. Thank you.
Sheriff, to you, what do you say to that? Are you doing enough to resolve this issue?
Well, I'm doing what no other sheriff has ever done in history. My very first day on the job, I removed the leadership team of East LA Station where the Kennedy Hall incident occurred. I followed it up with a criminal investigation, administrative investigation. I fired 4 deputies for misconduct. I suspended without pay 22. I transferred 36. I created a policy and implemented the policy in February of 2020. From there, I sponsored legislation, Assembly Bill 958. So our department policy is now the model of which state law is modeled after. That is effective. That is telegraph. And I had every single employee see a video where I communicated exactly what he's saying, by the way. And then they had to sign an attestation form, which goes on their permanent record that they understand the policy and they're being held accountable to it. That is progress, and that is actually addressing the situation. But deputy gangs has become a political buzzword, and it's just like unicorns. Everybody knows what a unicorn looks like, but I challenge you, name one. Name a single deputy gang member, and I've yet to hear that.
Would you respond to that?
You just heard. He doesn't acknowledge they exist. Can't fix a problem you don't know exists. His own chief of staff that he handpicked has a Grim Reaper tattoo. Ask him what a Grim Reaper is. He has stopped his IA investigators from investigating an incident involving the banditos at Kennedy Hall. Is that a person who takes deputy gang serious? I don't think so.
Sure.
Well, for one thing, he's going to have to explain what the Northtown Rangers are. Ring a bell, Mr. Luna?
Oh, absolutely.
And what his involvement in that group is. And I'll tell you this, we took all the action we could legally, and we cannot go beyond that because then we're violating the rights of our employees. So if someone believes there's a gang member, I've asked this of the OIG, I've asked this of the COC, the board, everyone who claims, oh my God, the sky is falling, deputy gangs are running up, name a single one. If you can't name one, well, then you're not going to do anything. Who are you kidding?
You want to respond to what he said about basically accusing you of being in a gang? Is that what you're accusing him of?
I don't know. Again, he's talking. I don't know where he's getting it from. Northtown Rangers was a group that was in the Long Beach Police Department at North Division years ago that, by the way, we eradicated.
Sheriff, just to be clear, were you accusing him of being in a gang?
Well, I'm talking actual peace officers, cops from Long Beach, current and retired, and they say that was a problem and is still an issue with Long Beach. They've never addressed the issue of white supremacy and mistreatment of African Americans and minorities in general. And you should be very familiar with that because that keeps rearing its ugly head.
All right, now we want to go back to Frank Stoltz from KPCC for his question. Frank.
Let's talk a little bit about, thank you, Alex, criminal justice reform. LA County is spending tens of millions of dollars on diverting people from jail into mental health treatment and other social services in what's called a Care First, Jails Last plan. Sheriff Villanueva, you have called this an unrealistic, woke approach to public safety. Why do you say that?
Well, it's pretty simple because when the department was defunded, $145 million one year, $16 million the next year, 1,281 positions removed. Where do you think that budget went? It went to the Care First Jails Lack. It went to Justice Care and Opportunities Department. Big fancy names are willing and titles, but when you come to what exactly, what service are you delivering and who's getting it and who's being held accountable if the service works or not, total silence. There is zero accountability, zero transparency. We're just dumping the money down a rabbit hole and nothing is happening. While I still need to deal with the conditions of confinement of my inmates in the county jail who are suffering for lack of resources and lack of staffing. Those are real problems. I need to get them on their feet and in better shape than when they entered in the jail system. But I'm depriving them of programming because I lack the funding, the resources, and the staffing. And this is something that Judge Dean Ferguson is now addressing with the TRO that was just issued.
Chief Luna, do you support Care First, Jails Last?
We have to look at different alternatives because I keep on repeating this, but the status quo is not working. We have, unfortunately, a reputation for having the worst jails in the country. As a matter of fact, recently a federal monitor said there had been no progress, progress slowed to a halt under this current administration with the 2 consent decrees that currently exist at the LA County Jail. We need good management. We need better leadership. We need to turn the page on history and finally look at jails in a completely different way with subject matter experts outside of law enforcement to deal with all the mentally ill that are in jail. We need to get them better health care, mental health care. We need to deal with the overcrowding, and we need to hold employees accountable. That's not what I hear here. We have to work very hard and roll up our sleeves and finally get on track with these 2 consent decrees.
Sheriff, the chief says it's a management problem, not a money problem.
Well, actually, maybe he needs to explain that to the federal judge, Dean Ferguson, who says the exact opposite. It is definitely a funding issue, and now the attention is being turned towards the Board of Supervisors because they're the one that have been depriving our custody operations of the necessary funding so we can have a constitutional level of care. That is our mission. During the pandemic, we got an award for innovation from the American Jail Association for our approach to the COVID that actually saved lots of lives, hundreds of lives, because of the efforts we did, because we actually do care.
Do you want to respond to that, Chief?
If we're saving lives, congratulations.
Okay. Now our next question comes from one of our partners. That's the California Contract Cities Association. They're deeply concerned about lawsuits related to alleged misconduct by deputies. Over the last 5 years, we have seen tens of millions of dollars taxpayers have had to pay out every year due to lawsuits against the Sheriff's Department. About $35 million alone in the Kobe Bryant case that we just saw. As Sheriff, we'll start with you, Chief Luna. What policies will you implement to mitigate the risks of some of these massive lawsuits that end up costing every one of us taxpayers?
First of all, you have to look in the mirror and hold yourself accountable. You have to look at what you are doing, what your department is doing, and make sure you start taking corrections from A to Z. You look at every lawsuit that came in, you have county counsel debrief all the juries and find out what in our policy, what in our training, or what in our accountability do we have to look at to change the trajectory that we're on. And then communicating this with our customers that work in every contract city. Because you're right, the Kobe Bryant thing, and if you look at the lawsuits just in this last year, I counted at least 6 against Alex Villanueva by members of his close command staff that are accusing him of everything from discrimination to cover-ups to just some god-awful allegations of corruption. We've got to stop this.
He says you're costing taxpayers money. What do you say?
Well, first, he knows darn well that any lawsuit that works its way through the court system takes years. So most of the lawsuits we're paying out today were incidents that happened under my predecessor, even before my predecessor. But most important, when it comes to liability, there's a man named Galen Ball who received 50 stitches across his head to put his head back together after an encounter involving Mr. Luna. And all the documents were shredded when, in anticipation of SB 14-1, then Chief Luna decided, let's get rid of all the documentation so no trial attorney has anything to discover. That's liability. Another liability, when you panic and shoot through a door and you shoot someone on the other side of the door and they end up dying, his name was Faustino Rodriguez. He was a Breonna Taylor of the 1990s. Yes, and this is a tragedy. Again, Mr. Luna, he needs to explain his role in that one. In that, if I look at, and I've read through all the evidence, I've read from people involved in the investigation, it smacks of a cover-up, and that drives liability. Thank God it didn't happen today.
Big allegations there.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. In my history, I was involved in one officer-involved shooting. He just said I killed somebody. He needs to look at the reports again. I'm sitting up here shocked that the sheriff of LA County is saying this publicly, and his information is flawed. Because in that incident, I shot my partner. I was on a SWAT team. We were serving a search warrant. My partner, unfortunately, shot and killed the suspect. I don't know. He's putting out false information to all of you, and it's really scary that a guy who's calling himself the sheriff of LA County continuously is putting out just misinformation.
He says basically you're lying or you got your facts wrong.
Well, I can read. He was involved in the incident. Someone died tragically. And who on earth does a raid on a search warrant in a house where they know there are guns, they know it's fortified, they know there are minor children? Hey, let's ram our way through the front door at 7:40 at night when everyone's watching TV. What a great plan that was. And you participated in that plan. That does not happen in our department. Not even in 1992, our department, they would do such a reckless action.
Oswaldo, next question to you.
Well, leaves a lot of questions there, obviously, but let's change it a little bit. Should the county experiment with having unarmed personnel instead of sheriff's deputies responding to car, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic violations? Start off with you, sir.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. Should the county experiment with having unarmed personnel instead of sheriff's deputies responding to car, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic violations?
I think we need to look at every alternative. Police work has evolved. It's changed. We need to do an analysis, and again, looking at data to figure out what kind of calls are we responding to, what kind of proactive work are we doing, what does our community expect from us, what are we getting at the end of the day out of this? So to answer the question, it sounds like you're asking me, do I believe in other alternative responses to responding to these kind of incidents? And I 100% do. We cannot continue to do the same thing over and over and over and fail. Not to say that we're always failing, but to your earlier question about liability, if we start looking at this, that's another way to reduce liability. It's just policing in the 21st century means that you're being more strategic and just smarter on the way we approach problems. So yes, I fully support it.
Sheriff?
We have community service officers at most of our patrol stations, and they take reports for burglaries, for thefts, and things like that. But when it comes to actually traffic enforcement, that belongs to a sworn peace officer, and that actually conforms to state vehicle code. You can't assign someone who is not sworn to pull someone over in effective detention, and that's something Mr. Luna should be aware of. And when it comes to exploring other things that we can do, by all means, we have co-response models. A mental evaluation team pairs up deputies with licensed clinicians, and they work together in team. They're not in uniform. They do an incredible job of de-escalating cases, and no one goes to jail. They get people the proper care. It might be a 72-hour psychiatric hold or in a facility. That's how a co-response model works. It's effective, and it takes away from some of the workload of the deputies working patrol that can't sit on a body waiting for a bed in a psychiatric facility. So there are things that we can improve on that, but when you're at 0.9 deputies per 1,000 residents,
Thank you.
It's tough to do that.
You got a rebuttal there?
I think the men and women of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department do a fantastic job. But I'm talking to you as a person who, as a 13-year-old, was riding a bicycle and got tossed face first into the hood of a sheriff's car when I was in middle school in Santa Fe Springs when the sheriffs had that contract there. I've seen it from the other side. It doesn't feel good. We've got to look at other ways of doing our work.
Erica, to you, a question about George Gascon.
I do. So this, I'm going to put it to both of you. So, Sheriff, you helped lead the effort to recall District Attorney Gascon. Obviously, that failed to make it onto the ballot. So at this point, it looks like he's going to be District Attorney in LA for the next couple of years. If I'm a victim of a crime, don't I want the sheriff and the DA to work together?
Ideally, yes. In fact, his predecessor, Jackie Lacey, and I had a very good working relationship. We met each other every roughly 90 days. I'd visit her, she'd visit me. We'd address issues of concern. But when you're district attorney and your first day in office, you come down like Moses in the mountains with a tablet and say, this is my special orders, everyone shall follow. That is not a collaborative model. That is not working with all your criminal justice partners to see what areas of the criminal justice system can be reformed. And there are areas that we can definitely do a lot of reform, but it has to be together. It has to be buy-in from all the stakeholders. That never happened. So now, like I said, 13,677 cases in 2021 tells me he is the wrong person for the job because he is not a district attorney. He is a second public defender, and that is jeopardizing the safety of every single man and woman here in Los Angeles County, and I'm holding accountable to that. If he changes course and said, hey, you know what, okay, I had a wrong approach, let's turn this around, I'd be more than happy to work with him, but I'm just not hearing that from his office.
Chief, how would you work with the DA if elected, or how important is it?
The relationship between the sheriff and the DA is critical. And it's not about the fact whether I like the man or not. If he got voted into office by a significant percentage, and if I get voted into office, it is my responsibility and obligation, because the people of the county of the people of the county of Los Angeles voted for both of us and expect us to work together. I don't agree with all of George Gascon's policies, but my obligation is to work with him so that I can do the best we can do to make sure cases are filed, and we're not presenting to our employees again, this us versus them mentality of, you know what, you don't have to respond to calls, you don't have to investigate crimes because the DA is not going to file them. That is unethical, it is immoral, and we cannot have that attitude towards our community in LA County.
Sheriff, do you have a response to that? And also, you know, you said that what you just said, but, you know, Gascon is going to be our DA for the next couple of years. So do you plan on not cooperating with him, even if he doesn't change his policies?
All of our investigators, they file cases when they can with him. If they have the opportunity to go federally and go around him, like in the case of the tragic murder of LAPD officer Fernando Arroyos, we took it federally. Same thing with the Ed Buck situation. We took that federally. The cases where we had now fentanyl poisoning, we're taking those federally because case law is not very solid in this regard. And then the district attorney, I have no confidence in him doing his job. But the point is, he has to actually file cases. If he's not filing cases, we can't play pretend that we're going to work together and have this wonderful relationship. He's not doing his job.
Thank you. Chief, do you have a response to that?
We have an obligation to work with people even we don't like. I don't know if I walk into your office, any of you sitting in the audience or watching this on TV, and you just heard me for a week call you names, demean you, say you're going to walk down with 2 tablets from a mountain. I don't think you're going to be very welcoming to me and want to work with me. This nonsense has got to stop. We've got to start acting like adults and working with people for the benefit of the residents of this county.
All right, we're starting to run short on time, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit. Maybe we'll do a minute each on this question without the rebuttals. Concealed carry is an issue that a lot of people are concerned about. The Supreme Court changed the rules, made it easier for the Sheriff's Department to have more latitude in terms of who gets concealed carry permits. What should be the policy for concealed carry permits going forward?
Well, now actually the Supreme Court has laid it out, and strikingly it's the exact same policy we already have. And it used to be the good cause standard for the state of California, and we made that good cause standard something was achievable. In the past it was impossible. So we made it where if you have a legitimate concern for your safety, and by virtue of what you do, who you are, being a victim of violent crime, we gave you that. And so we started raising the number of CCWs, but we have to go through the thorough vetting process. We have to follow rigorously state law. We get audited, and the results speak for themselves. So now, with the Supreme Court decision, now we're in an avalanche of people asking for CCWs. I cannot deny them based on the Supreme Court's decision.
Quickly to you.
We have to follow the law. We have to have a process to make sure that we're doing backgrounds and people have the proper training and they're storing them properly. But let's not fool anybody here. In the last week, there's a story out there that needs to be investigated, that there was a pay-to-play donor where people were giving this sheriff donations and they were being fast-tracked from 8 months to a year down to 2 months, and there were 2 people working out of his office, working directly for him, who were personal friends of his.
20 seconds to respond to that.
Our public corruption unit doesn't target our critics. They also target anyone who's accused of a crime, and that includes those very 2 individuals that you mentioned. So thank you for actually acknowledging the work of our public corruption unit.
All right, we're going to call this quick bites. These are real quick answers. One word, first thing that comes to mind. What is one word to describe the state of the Sheriff's Department?
Disarray.
One word to describe the state of the Sheriff's Department.
Perseverant.
What is one nice thing about your opponent?
He dresses nicely.
What is one nice thing about your opponent?
I appreciate all the years of service that he served with the LA County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, and this is called personal issues. This is what we do on our political show, The Issue Is. This is real quick, fun stuff. Maybe we'll find something you agree on. Favorite TV show?
Big Bang Theory.
Favorite TV show?
It's a Big Bang Theory.
Oh! Favorite?
First time out.
Favorite band or musical artist?
Vicente Fernandez.
Mana.
What is your favorite book?
Ooh. I would have to say, and you'll laugh at this one, a small book that probably no one's ever heard about, and it's Frame Reflections by Sean and Ryan. Very influential book.
What about you?
The Bible.
All right. And what is your favorite LA sports team?
Dodgers.
Favorite LA sports team?
Dodgers and Lakers.
There we go. Okay, we found something. Big Bang Theory and the Dodgers. Thank you both for being here tonight. Up next, we're going to have the mayor's debate. Sheriff Alex Villanueva, Chief Robert Luna. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more right after this. Good job.
Good Day LA on Fox 11, the ones to watch.